Hi, I'm Siobhan Fallon Hogan, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From, with Fabulous Anne and Fantastic Damien.
What a fucking world that there is a new fear that has been unlocked in the lives of New Yorkers. I can't actually believe it. I was not in New York when the earthquake happened, and I just watched it happen on my phone in real time, and that was its own terror. But Damien, you were in New York when the earthquake happened on Friday. What the fuck?
It was confusing. That's the best way I can describe it, because I was actually getting ready to make oatmeal, and so I had a pot on my stove that had a clean colander. They were both clean, and they were both sitting on the stove getting ready to be put away. But I was like, I'm going to keep the pot out for the oatmeal. So I'm like getting the oatmeal, and I live close to the 125th Street subway stop, and so sometimes you can hear the train underneath me, even though I'm not like I'm close, but not that close. So I hear feel what I believe is sort of like the tremor, if you will, of the subway. And I kind of stop in my tracks, and I'm like, and then the pot keeps shaking on the stove and rattling. And I was like, what is happening? And then I put my hand on the pot to stop it from shaking. And then I'm like, is this an earthquake? But then it was over. By the time my brain caught up with what was happening, I no longer felt it. And then I immediately looked. I didn't even immediately look at my phone. I got a message that someone was like, "Did you feel that? That was an earthquake." And I was like, "Oh my god."
Did Ronnie have any reaction?
Well,
they're always like, "Animals no, animals no."
It's funny you ask. A lot of people have asked that. I think I was so because I didn't know exactly what was happening. I didn't even think to look at her. But she didn't have a reaction that was up off of her bed and looking around or looking at me or barking or anything. So the answer is no. She seemed to just be content sleeping in her bed. But maybe she did react, but I wasn't clued into what was happening. So now I'm like, well, if there's another one, now I want to see if she's gonna. I feel like LA and folks that live where earthquakes are more common are probably shut up, snooze fest, get used to it. But it's both terrifying, but also fascinating, because there was one in 2011, I remember, and I was working in a restaurant, and they said you could feel it, and I was like, I didn't feel it, but I was probably carrying a tray of food.
I don't even remember the other one. I don't know that I've ever experienced one, or if I did, I didn't remember the 2011 one. But as a person that loves disaster movies, the sick part of me wishes that I had been in New York when it happened so that I could have experienced it. But I know that that's probably the wrong tack to take, because I feel like it's a real slippery slope between wanting to experience an earthquake and then dying from an earthquake. So I just feel I don't need another thing to worry about in New York or anywhere. I had been in Missouri last week, and there was the tornado warning. We had I hadn't experienced that since my childhood. I think it's the first Wednesday of every month in my hometown, they test the tornado siren. So it's 5 minutes of a siren just going off throughout the whole town. It is very unnerving. So it took me back to those days. One of my recurring nightmares as a kid was as a tornado, a funnel cloud coming down my front porch. So I have a soft spot in my heart for natural disasters, but I know that that's sick. So I'm glad that everyone is okay, and there doesn't appear to be any major damage, but it is definitely very unsettling.
Was there ever an action movie or a disaster film about earthquake? I know there's something called Earthquake, but was that a hit?
I think it was a hit, because there was this whole series of films like The Towering Inferno, The Poseidon Adventure, Earthquake, and then there was Airport. So there were a series of disaster films that were cast with it was a Gary Marshall movie, New Year's Eve or Mother's Day, where it's here's 45 A-listers who each have 3 lines, but it was so much better because they all were getting murdered by horrible they're getting killed in these horrible ways.
I don't think I've seen any of the ones that you just mentioned. Can we watch one or both or a couple of them?
Gladly, anytime. The Poseidon Adventure changed my life. It's what introduced me to Shelley Winters. It's one of the greatest performances of all time, and The Towering Inferno is so good. It's Paul Newman.
Is that O.J. Simpson in that as well?
He's in, what is he in? I'm thinking of O.J. Simpson in Naked Gun.
No, he's in Towering Inferno,
right.
I believe.
I
think he's in Towering Inferno.
How do you think O.J. Simpson's doing today?
Is he in
Is he in prison?
I think he's in prison. Maybe not.
Might be right.
I don't know.
You're right. He was in the Towering Inferno. Good memory. Yeah, I'm really ready to do a full disaster film breakdown anytime. I wish that format, I wish that genre would come back, because I feel like the closest we got was like we got The Day After Tomorrow in the early 2000s or late 90s, right? And then we got...
What's the one with Téa Leoni?
Oh, that's Deep Impact, which I love.
And then
Deep Impact
what's the
and
one?
Armageddon came out the same year.
And what's the one with Amy Brenneman with rubber boots on her hands?
Okay, that is Daylight, and that is incredible. We've talked about it here.
Folks, welcome. Hello. Number one, welcome back to You Might Know Her From with Ann and Damien. Number two, if we do a disaster film like movie club, would you join us on Patreon for it? Let us know. I think because I am sort of naive to the genre, but I think I'm more susceptible to this than Anne is. I think it's the youngest of 6 children for me, or maybe it's just my weak constitution. But like Anne, Anne will have an opinion and I will think she's cool. So then I will be like, yeah, I agree too. I hate this person. Or like, yeah, I love disaster films now, but I don't know. I didn't grow up with them and they're not like a thing, but I am ready to get on board with you because you'll make them cool and fun no matter what. So would you join us? Would you be so kind to join us? Let us know. Hello and welcome though back to another episode of You Might Know Her From proper.
With Ann and Damien, we are here every month shooting our shit, talking pop culture comings and goings, what we're reading, what we're listening to, what we're excited about, what we hate, which is a very strong Venn diagram overlap. And then we have an actress interview each episode.
If you're new to the show, we've been doing this for 150 episodes deep, so we have a rich catalog for you to go back and look at. It's true, we are kind of monthly, sometimes semi-monthly now. We're figuring it out. I mean, there was just an earthquake in New York. Actually, it was in New Jersey because my family in Pennsylvania also felt it. Isn't that scary?
Oh my
we live miles apart, about 80 some miles apart. They felt it and so did I.
The end is nigh. The end is nigh.
But we're trying to figure out our rhythm and blues here. And we come out about once a month and we shoot the shit. And then we interview an actor, a woman actor. And we're so happy to have you here to listen to this great episode today with Siobhan Fallon Hogan. And anything else you want to tell me before we get to the nuts and bolts with Siobhan?
I just want to get into the fact that it's been stated here before that I have a habit of killing off celebrities before they're dead. And I understand now where I get it from, because I was hanging out with my parents this past week, and out of nowhere, my dad, who's always just like updating the news on his phone, says to the back of my head, "Howard Stern is dead." I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm sad about that. I'm really sad. I didn't know that I had as soft of a spot for Howard Stern as I do, because I feel like also I grew up watching his show on E!
Yeah, same.
Where it was like pretty horrific and he did some pretty grotesque things to women, and I was not into it. But I feel like he's evolved somewhat and has a very beautiful interviewing style. That being said, I texted Damien right away. I said, "Howard Stern is dead!" ! And he freaked out. And about 3 minutes later, he texted me back and he said, "Please fact check this. Howard Stern is deeply not dead." I said, "So sorry. I was just reporting the news from Ralph Rodeman, who has, to date, updated me on the Notorious B.I.G.'s death, Tupac's death, the O.J. Simpson murders. What else he just keeps me up to speed on things historically. So I don't know how he got the facts wrong, but Howard Stern is alive and well as of the date of this recording.
So I can't remember. We were in person doing an intro outro, I think, or maybe a clip show. This was maybe pre-COVID, but we called your dad about something, or he called you while we were recording, and you were like, "Dad, I'm recording with Damien," and he was like. And then you were like, "Hey, can I ask you about like why such and such, like why you had this opinion about someone being a bad guy?" And he was like, "Yep, bad guy."
I think it was one of two people, because these are the stories I remember that my dad told me growing up. Number 1, Kelsey Grammer, accused rapist. Number 2, Liam Neeson, accused rapist. And I feel like now Liam Neeson's star has plummeted, because he's like come out as like kind of racist and disgusting and maybe a loser, which makes me sad, because I feel like I always thought if Natasha Richardson had chosen him, he was probably a good egg. But I think he was maybe a psychopath and potentially an accused rapist. But it was one of those two. And my dad said, "Oh, yep. Horrible. Accused of rape. Dead in our books." But he's been telling me this for 20 years. So I feel like, sometimes you fact check it, sometimes you don't, sometimes you just spread the rumor without fact checking it. And that's why I'm the person that I am today. It's like why I fall down internet holes about Kate Middleton and I'm like deeply invested.
Oh man,
Remember they said she was going to make an appearance on Easter and she never did? Like, is she alive?
Kate Middleton.
Yes.
I don't know, Anne. It feels...
I know you don't care. I know you don't care. I just need somebody to talk to me about it as if I care because it is like...
No, I do.
It is deep levels of conspiracy happening.
I'm into the conspiracy theories, but I feel like they did this thing... I feel like it's tricky because they said that she had cancer so that people couldn't like theorize about it. And so I feel like that feels like it feels weird because it's like, but also I'm like, yeah, I'll tell you some of my theories off the record.
Okay, incredible. I'm just really obsessed with the fact that the video might be AI. I mean,
I think the video, interesting.
I think the video is real because here's the thing.
She doesn't look good.
Not to be insensitive, she doesn't look well. She's for sure wearing a lace front. And there appears to be movement behind her that is consistent. But that being said, somebody put Meghan Markle's face on the video and it looked pretty realistic too.
Really?
So I thought, you
wow.
know what? Anyway, it's a whole new world that we live in. But I'm definitely a conspiracy theorist at heart. So you have to take some of what I say with a grain of salt. But I think if you fact check Kelsey Grammer and Liam Neeson, you'll find that Ralph Rodeman was correct. He was just wrong about Howard Stern.
I don't think it was either of those people. I think we got to go through. We got to dig through our archives. We'll link it out.
Really?
We'll link it out.
Okay.
I did a quick Google search while you were talking about Kate Middleton, and I couldn't find Ralph Rodeman linked to our show, but we will find it. We will.
I maybe just didn't put his government name in the show notes.
I was going to say, is it okay that I'm saying his name on the record here?
It's fine. It's fine. I think anybody that knows me knows my dad, and we have the same face. And, you know, it is what it is. He is a large part of my DNA. So I love him.
It is what it is. Folks, thanks for being here. We're really excited for you to listen to this month's episode with the great Siobhan Fallon Hogan. Siobhan just met us with the best, like, down to tell stories, fun energy, but also like we got into some really cool and interesting conversations about her choices and the machinations that go behind those choices in her work, both as an actor and also as a writer and producer. So we're excited for you to listen.
You might know her from Men in Black,
Forrest Gump,
Dancer in the Dark,
Dogville,
The House That Jack Built,
Shelter and Solitude,
Rushed,
Seinfeld,
and Saturday Night Live. Holy smokes, Siobhan Fallon, it is such a pleasure to have you here on You Might Know Her From. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We are so thrilled to have you here, and we've got a lot to get into. But first, I feel like I've just got to dive in with something that I've been personally obsessed with for like going on 20 years. And that's your performance that I think a lot of people from our generation know. And that's in Men in Black. And you're Beatrice, Vincent D'Onofrio's wife. And in the opening scene, you deliver these lines with what I'm going to call like an iconic accent. So his name is Edgar, but you call him Egger.
Egger.
And when he wants sugar water, you say sure water.
Yeah.
And it is embedded in my brain. And so when Damien and I were doing research to interview you, we found out that Egger was something that you brought into the audition room. So a few things. One, how often would you say that a big choice like that pays off from an audition? And two, how often are you asked to do an accent that you definitely don't have in your back pocket?
Okay, I will say first and foremost, you don't get asked to do accents, but I just bring them in because I'm like, I bring my bag of tricks. Because I'm like, look, I'm not getting any parts on my good looks. So I'm like, let me just bring in my bag of tricks. And you got such a short time when you get in there. By the way, in Men in Black, I wasn't supposed to be the farmer's wife. I was supposed to be giving birth to an alien. And I was like, look, I don't give birth to aliens. So, hey, you know, you go in and you're like I tell young kids this all the time that want to be actors. I'm like, you know, you got, well, now it's weird because you really record it. But like,
right.
I went to meet Barry Sonnenfeld the morning of that audition in New York City. A snowstorm was coming. I had a babysitter for my daughter, Bernadette. And I get to the Regis Hotel because I'm, as you can tell, a disaster. I couldn't even set up this damn thing up. Zoom or podcast or whatever we're on, whatever people call it. And so I got there and I buzz up, you know, huge snowstorm. I walk through Central Park and he's like, Siobhan, your audition's not till 3 o'clock this afternoon. I was like, what? I'm like, listen, I'm on the clock, buddy. I got a babysitter. I got no money. So anyway, I was like, okay. I'm like on the hotel phone. I'm like, the people in the Regis Hotel are like, is this girl homeless or like what's happening? So he's like, I was like, Barry, here's the deal. I got to bring the baby. So I come back that afternoon because I can't afford the babysitter anymore. I bring the baby back. I go, what am I going to do with the baby? He's like, I'll hold her. And then he's like, oh, yeah, and I got news for you. I don't want to give birth to the alien. I want to be the farmer's wife. And he's like, okay, cuckoo bird. So then he holds the baby. Thank God she doesn't cry. And then I'm from outside of Syracuse, Casanova. So my sisters, two of them are attorneys, one's a nurse, and they thought after I went to acting school, and you can hear my voice, they're like, Siobhan, you have an accent now. You think you're somebody because you went to acting school. And I'm like, listen, let me tell you something. People mock me for my accent. I just know that you're supposed to put R's on things like and D's like Edgar, but they're like Edgar. And like my sisters, if they hear this, going to kill me. But like my sister's an attorney, and you know the word probably? She's like, probably. Like we recently all went on a vacation together, and they're like, something. This is what they're not kidding you. I made it into a song. Something's probably gonna happen. And like that would be something in my voice. Something's probably gonna happen. In most people, it's like something's going to probably going to happen. Anyway, so where that came from was you're like, hey, listen, I got other questions.
No. This is dialect work is like, we pushed this question to the top because Damien and I love talking to actors about dialects.
So I go in, and there was a carpet store in Syracuse. It was called Debbie's Carpets because this guy named the shop after his daughter. And the daughter used to do, well, this is like, how old is my daughter? I went out there, my daughter's a baby. She's 29. So this is 29 years ago. So she's, not to date myself, and just in case I die. But anyway, so, there was this commercial, and she used to go on and she'd deadpan go, I'm Debbie from Jerry's Carpets at 60609 East Genesee Street. That's Debbie. So I think it's so funny when people don't have expression.
Yeah.
So anyway, that just kills me. And they have no, a lot of people don't use their consonants up there.
Yeah. Right.
Matter of fact, when I went to Lemoyne College in Syracuse, it was 20 minutes from my house, but I told people it was 45, so it legitimized my living on campus. And I remember I was a senior, and I was doing a Shakespeare monologue to try to get into graduate school. And it was like Phoebe from As You Like It, which I ended up playing in Central Park with
Yes.
Yeah. So I had to throw that in, to make myself look really legitimate.
No, we love your theater credits. We're really here for it.
I'm so well-rounded. Anyway, so I was saying, I remember the professor at Lemoyne College was like, you are Sylvia, something like that. He's like, it's actually our. I'm like, what? Like, oh, you are? Like, so many things I didn't know how to pronounce.
Yeah.
I remember Star Trek. This is not Shakespearean, but I thought it was Star Trek. I was like, you guys like Star Trek? I never got it. Like, what are you talking about? Is it like a running race?
Did you feel pressure to change your accent when you were doing theater? Did you feel like you had to lose it as much as possible?
Well, for theater, I would try to, if it was a legitimate part, which by the way, I didn't get the legitimate parts, but when I was Phoebe in As You Like It, I was so irreverent and anything for a laugh. And this guy, these were legitimate actors, my really good friend, Nancy Hauer, who's still my good friend. She's now a director. And Viola Davis was in it. These girls were from Juilliard, and I was their roommate. And I was like, what the hell am I doing in Shakespeare in the Park? At the time, to date myself, Demi Moore had been on Vanity Fair pregnant, nude. So I took that magazine cover, cut her head out, put mine in, and put it on the door. Because there was this one guy who actually there's two guys who hated me because I was they would be down the hall and be like, couldn't you? What, they were Juilliard. Couldn't you, wouldn't you, shouldn't you? And I'd go like this. Gotta butt. I was like, this is so stupid. What are you doing? But everything was a joke to me. So this one guy knew that I could do an imitation of Katharine Hepburn. And he's like, Siobhan, please, please, please do it. So I was like, what says our Sylvia's? And then the audience would roar, but it had absolutely nothing to do with the performance. Adrian Hall, who was this really great guy, he was the director. Come to find out, directors, they're only there rehearsal week, then they're opening it, and then they're out. So I remember there was a knock at the door, by the way, with my head on top of Demi Moore's body. Mm-hmm. The stage manager, Siobhan, may I talk to you? And I'm like, the corners of my mouth are like, yes. By the way, I had gone on stage in the All the World's a Stage scene, which I wasn't in a sack. and sat between Viola and Nancy Howard and wrote on my teeth, hi, H-I. They didn't know I was going to be on. And they're such good actors. They're like in character, they're in the chorus. And I'm like, listen, you're in the chorus. Don't bother being in character. No one cares about you. So I have written with a sack on H-I with pencil. And I'm trying to keep my teeth dry. So I'm like blowing on there like, so I'm like sneak on in a burlap bag because the costume designers were from SNL and I was doing SNL. So they knew I was crazy. And I was like, I go, I'm going to sneak on. So the lead guy's like, oh, the world's a stage. And many of us are just players. And then the chorus was directed to turn to one another and shake their heads. So I sneak in between Viola, Academy Award winner, Nancy Howard, now a really well-known director, me, I think I'm somebody because I'm Phoebe, but I'm sneaking on stage. And I go, I put my lip up and I go, hi. They burst out laughing and they get in trouble. They don't even know it's me. But when the guy knocks at the door, the AD, I'm like, holy smokes, I am dead. I snuck on. I'm getting paid for this. This is Shakespeare in the Park. This is not okay. He didn't even know I went on for that. He goes, listen, Siobhan, can we get back to the performance that Adrian created? You cannot be doing Katharine Hepburn during your monologue. And I was like, sure, fine. I was like, I'm so glad that he doesn't know I snuck out of the burlap bag that I'll take it. I'll go back to a regular hick voice.
Right. Oh my
God. Oh God, incredible.
I hope there's footage of that somewhere. We're going to look for it and dive deep.
And Elizabeth Montgomery was also in that, right? She was like your Rosalind?
She was Rosalind, and I was engaged that summer. Now, I was 30.5, and my family was like, will she ever get married? And I had met my husband, who's like a total New Yorker with like a New York accent. His family owned the White Horse Tavern, and he would bring like when I say friends, he would bring 30 guys from like the trading floor with cigars because you could smoke then. It's outdoors, and they're like, Phoebe. They're yelling, and I'm like, and Elizabeth's awesome and hilarious, but okay, during rehearsal, they had like 2 or 3 weeks of rehearsal, like discussing the language, and I was like, hey, listen, I got a wedding to plan here, so I would be Nancy Howard would be next to me, and she's really waspy. We have the same sense of humor. I don't know how we were even friends. She'd be like, Siobhan, it is so not right that you have the Sandals Jamaica. That's like an all-inclusive tacky place where people go.
Yeah.
Honeymoon pamphlet under the table, faking that you're listening to Adrian and Elizabeth and all these really legitimate, fabulous actors.
I love it.
Cut to, I'm in bed doing a podcast and she has a fabulous career.
Oh man, I love you for it. So to set up for our listeners, some of our listeners might best know you for your scene-stealing work in the aforementioned Men in Black, Forrest Gump, Daddy Daycare, Holes, Charlotte's Web, Baby Mama, your time on SNL. You, of course, are also Elaine's roommate, Tina, on Seinfeld. All of this incredible work, over 80 credits on IMDb. Look her up. But we also have been long obsessed with how you're funny, but you're also an actor's actor. And you've appeared in like some of our favorite art house films, most notably 3 with Danish auteur Lars von Trier. Can you tell us how you got cast in his dark musical Dancer in the Dark and how that collaboration has evolved over the years?
Okay, so honestly, I am the poster child for fake it till you make it. I had no idea who Lars von Trier was. And one of my really fabulous friends was like, you have an audition for Lars von Trier? Do you have any idea who he was? And I was like, who he is? And I was like, no. Anyway, so my daughter, I have 3 kids, but my daughter Bernadette was a very difficult baby. I was going for A.V. Kaufman, casting director who's huge. She does Succession, done many things. She cast both my movies, by the way, that I wrote. So I know I have to cry in this scene. I have to be the prison guard for Bjork, which ends up winning. She wins the Palme d'Or for Cannes. And I am like, oh my God, how am I going to cry? At this point, I'm really pegged for being comedic. I've done SNL. I'm like, I go down. Well, to my luck or bad luck, Bernadette, my daughter, had an ear infection and was up all night screaming. I get down there and I am like a dish rag. I'm like, I'm so tired. And I did not legitimately cry because I'm a good actress. I cried because I was so tired that I couldn't believe it. And Lars von Trier cast me. So I go to Denmark and I had to go for rehearsal first. I remember I had to go to his house immediately from the airport. And I'm also a really weak person. Like, I'm not the type that can like get off a plane and be like, let's go. People are like, when you go to Europe, you definitely need to like push through. I'm like, I'm not that person. Anyway, but I had to go to his house. His babies, twins, were in prams outside the house because that's what they do over there. They're like tough as nails.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, I just learned how to use Instagram recently, and they have like kindergartners playing in the mud and covered in mud, which Americans would go crazy, but they're all into that. So anyway, I go to his house and he's like, all right, Siobhan, would you like whiskey? I'm like, it's 9 o'clock in the morning and I'm Irish. If I have whiskey now, you're not going to like me. So would you like tea? And I was like, if I have tea, I'll be up till 5 days from now. Anyway, so we rehearse. It's Catherine Deneuve. I mean, can you imagine? I'm like,
Amazing.
It's like crazy. And Bjork is a fabulous singer. Now I go home. I got to bring my kids back. This time I had a little boy who was 18 months old, the babysitter, the whole thing. They're the best people in the world. And I learned from them, Lars, every Friday champagne. You're out by like 6 or 7. That's kind of the stretch. On the weekends, so I produced and wrote 2 movies recently, Shelter and Solitude and Rushed. How to treat my actors because of them. So every weekend they would plan, they'd be like, oh, you're going to be here. You might be a little lonely. Would you like a train ticket to Stockholm? I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll take it. Stick the baby in the Bjorn, put the baby in the wagon, stick him on the train. We're going. So,
hell yeah.
But also, Lars is the greatest guy. And, his reputation, I always told him, I go, Lars, you're just an 8th grade boy. Because you're afraid of traveling, people think you're like mysterious. You're about as mysterious as I am. You're not mysterious. But it's brilliant to be agoraphobic and not travel because people think you're interesting. So anyway, he's the best guy. We totally hit it off. And then, I'm Catholic, so I don't usually believe in these kind of things, but now I do. That when I flew out of there after doing Dancer in the Dark, I was like, I shall return. I just knew it. I felt in my bones, and then I went back and did Dogville and The House of Jack Bull. And my director for both my movies is from Denmark, from Vibeke Vindelov, the producer of both films, recommended Vibeke Messiah. So it's all this crazy
interweb.
Which I always tell everybody, I'm like, a lot of actors, just listen, let's always look at the cup half full. So many great actors, so many great attitudes, but there's some with really bad attitudes. It's like, could we possibly be luckier? This isn't work. When I go to work, when I get a job, that is not work to me. That is pay that you get paid for. So it is so insanely lucky. And that's the attitude in Europe. It's like, okay, if you're online for lunch, I'm not getting lunch above the prop guy who's ahead of me. We're all in this like a play. Just going back to Shakespeare in the Park, it's everybody's equally as important. My daughter right now just got out of college. She's a production assistant on Only Murders in the Building.
Oh,
yeah.
very good.
It's like, every person is so important to each production. And that's the way I treat my crew because I learned it and I knew it, but then you live it. And then you're like, yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. I think Lars von Trier writes really well for women. And I mean, Damien and I connected because we both loved Dogville, and that was something before we even knew each other, that it was like a very important film for both of us. But what I'm really interested in is like your relationship with Lars. You were the prison guard in Dancer in the Dark, and Bjork gives this tour de force performance as like a first-time actress. You said you had a great working relationship with Lars. She described her relationship with him as torturous. Like, how do you, like, what was that like being on set working with both him and her in a very intense way?
Well, first of all, I'm from a big Irish Catholic family, and some people always, we'd be like, I loved my father. I wasn't afraid of him. I thought he was hilarious. One of my sisters didn't get along with him so well. So whatever. You have different takeaways of what you think is torture. I mean, I loved Lars, but he would say, Siobhan, do me a favor, because Bjork is not an actress. And, so her part was a torturous part.
Yeah.
So that's really rough. Like, so she's supposed to, be going to the chair. And so he's like, Siobhan, do me a favor. Could you, so when we had to like walk the 100, whatever, how many steps that was, we sang the song.
127, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
He's like, do me a favor. Could you get her going? So I was like, sure. So I was like, Bjork, oh my gosh, this is, and just talk to her about like what I would imagine as an actress and help her through it.
Wow.
But I think a lot of that came because the set was really respectful. A lot of that was she was under pressure, huge pressure. And it'd be like me, being under pressure to sing a song. Like actually, not to bring it around to my movie again, but this movie I just did, Shelter and Solitude, I had to sing as a country singer. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And then till it happens, and you're out in Nashville in your sound booth, and I was like, what was I thinking? This is horrible.
Siobhan, you are good. You're selling yourself short. You can sing. This is.
But I'm saying, like, it's not my comfort zone. And in your head, you get in your head.
Yeah.
As soon as you get in your head as an actor or probably as a singer, you're then second guessing yourself and you're going to swing at anything that moves. It's like, it's Lars's fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I basically have kind of a brother-sister relationship with Lars. And like Dogville. Okay. So Dogville, I'm in it with Ben Gazzara. My father's like, Siobhan, Ben Gazzara is my favorite actor. Lauren Bacall, I fly over with 3 kids. I have an 11-week-old. 9/11 has just happened. My parents are like, you got to get out of New York City. You're going to get killed. I'm like, I got offered a part in a movie. My daughter Sinead's 11 weeks. My son's 3. My daughter's turning 7. We're in first class, and I'm with Lauren Bacall. I'm not telling her who I am because it's a shit show. I'm like, I open up the above, whatever you call the overhead compartment, and Cheez-Its rain down. She and I become great friends. And she's like, Siobhan, did you think you and I would ever be friends? And I was like, no. She's like, why not? I said, because I didn't think it was very attractive when the Cheez-Its fell out of the overhead compartment. And I said, did you think you and I would be ever friends? Ever be friends? And she said, no. And I said, why not? Because you're a Catholic and I'm a Jew. And I used to take my kids to mass. I was so stupid. My husband was back working in the United States. Every Sunday, an infant to church in Denmark. By the way, there's not a lot of people go, and they were so noisy. But, she and I became amazing friends. And we would go for Thai food in Denmark, which makes no sense at all. And some of the cast would come in and she'd be like, Siobhan, here comes the cast. Do you think they like me? Like, none of it ever ends. And one time, I remember the life sentence lesson. And now this is going back, oh my God, this is like 25 years ago, at least. And it's like 2 days left of the movie. We're walking up the ramp, because Dogville was insane. It's like a fake set. I'll never forget, Lauren said, Lars, when she was supposed to own the shop and there's supposed to be flowers out, when will I be getting my flowers and my prop? And I was like, and Lars was like, on Monday, Lauren, on Monday. So on Monday, chalk is drawn on the ground of flowers because it's just a suggested set.
Yeah.
And Lauren looks at the flowers and she goes, how helpful. And anyway, so it's like 2 days before the movie's going to end. We're walking up the ramp to the set, and Lauren said, do you have anything lined up after this? And I was like, no. Do you? And she's like, no. She's 82, by the way. And she said, do you think you and I will ever work again? And I was like, oh my God. It doesn't end. And then, okay, but I'll tell you, I have never told this out loud in public, but I tell it to people all the time. I don't care anymore, though. Really, when Ricky Gervais is like, I just don't care. So Lars had this idea, because he's dogma, that we should all be mic'd. And we are all in the background, and Nicole Kidman's at the other end, and she's doing her thing with Stella and Skarsgård, and they're the main action. We're basically like chorus. We hardly have any parts. Hardly have any lines. And I'm still stuck in 6th grade, like, well, I only have 8 lines.
You've got the bell, Siobhan.
Yeah. My kids always say to me all the time, Martha rang the bell.
It's so good. Meanwhile, people are miming opening doors on the soundstage.
And remember, 9/11 has just happened. So Stellan Skarsgård and Paul Bettany and I made up this game called Osama bin Laden, which was the dumbest game, but it was like this. You'd go, Siobhan, how did that podcast go for you today? Went really well because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I was kind of channeling. And they're like, Osama bin Laden? Yes. So everything had to have Osama bin Laden, and it was insane. But anyway, so we're on set. It's, Ben Gazzara, Lauren Bacall, and me. in a circle, and we're supposed to be like literally like the High School Musical, like in the chorus, going, "What do you think of what's going on down there with Nicole being raped and all?" Like it's like but that's not even her character. I don't know what her character is. But I'm so stuck in high school. So's Ben Gazzara, and Lauren is just a great audience. So Ben is like, Siobhan, and by the way, he's had throat cancer at this point, so he's like, Siobhan,
Yeah.
pull my finger, and he farts. Now there's a major scene. Lars is filming, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I may have a fart too. I go, you can't. I go, you think that shocks me? And he says, yeah, yes, I do. And I go, I remember that show, remember that song, I can do anything better than you. So I go, I can do anything. And I go, pull my finger. And I don't know what happens, but the loudest fart in the world comes out, and both Lauren and Ben Gazzara separate like they're in 5th grade. Lars is like, cut! What the F is going on down there? And Ben Gazzara goes, there's a rhino on the set. And then, remember the death scene? Remember the death scene when he's like, so Lars has got like a steady cam. He comes up to each person. He's supposed to show each person dead. And I felt like I was like at a sleepover, and I'm like, oh no. And he's got, and I'm by myself, and don't forget, in the church, because I'm always alone, right. Martha rang the bell. And I'm like, oh no. And you're supposed to keep your eyes closed. I'm like, oh no, I think he might be over me with the camera. I can't tell, but I think he might. And I burst out laughing, and Lars was like, what the fuck's going on? I'm like, oh, sorry.
Oh my gosh. Woo. Thank you for that. Wow.
Like, so crazy.
That really took me out. Dogville, I really feel like revisiting it was a real, I don't know that pleasure is the right word, but I do love the movie so much.
It was really fun. And it was so insane because every night, this is the other thing about Lars and European filming that's been my experience. The idea was keep the cast all together so that we'd be really close. So everybody's in shock because of 9/11. So every night people would get plastered at this big, long table with tons of candles, because it's winter, the sun's only up for like 5 hours. But I couldn't because I had 3 babies, and Nicole Kidman was in her own house, and Lauren was in her own house. Everybody else was in the inn. But I would go up, I would stay for like an hour and then leave, and insanity was taking place. But it was great.
It's so cool. So we are, I think, fair to say, Lars von Trier fans. And I hadn't seen the 2018 film, The House That Jack Built, so I watched it for this interview. I thought it was excellent. I thought Matt Dillon was excellent. I thought you were great. It was very distressing and disturbing in that, basically he's a serial killer and every vignette is a portrait of one of his kills. So in this movie, you get both like horrifically choked and then slowly stabbed to death. Like, it's not a spoiler, I think, because, oh my God, yes, and your face gets like hollowed out. Yeah. It's really... if you're a person that doesn't like film violence, this film is not for you. However, I'm really interested in the fact that, you've talked really openly about how the fact that your Irish Catholic values are really important to the way that you make career decisions.
Sure.
So I feel like, how do you sort of negotiate your faith with the work of some of these directors, like also including Michael Haneke? Funny Games really fucked me up. I thought it was a great film, but it was so scary. Like, how does your faith factor into making these types of decisions with these art house films?
Well, here's the deal. I mean, there's nothing ethically wrong about a person being a victim. Do you know what I mean? Or to me, that's not where I draw the line and say I'm out. Matter of fact, The House That Jack Built, I went to Cannes with Lars, Matt, a lot of the producers, and my kids came. 2 of my kids. And my daughter, Sinead, was only in 10th grade, and my son, I believe, was a freshman in college. And they couldn't sit with us because I, sat with Lars and Matt, and my kids were over, not in seats that were for the, cast and director. So the film ends, and Lars gets a 7-minute standing ovation because at this point, he had been persona non grata at Cannes, and then he wasn't, and it was like a big welcome back because they really love him, and they're forgiving people. So okay, so the film ends, and my daughter Sinead is like, "Mom, can I talk to you?" I was like, "Yeah, what's wrong? Do you feel good? You did not tell me that you could dragged and your face falls off and you get choked out. They go, oh yes, sorry, I forgot about that. Because, it is, you don't think of that. But I'm veering off of your question, but you might find this interesting, your listeners too. But when I had to do this film, all goes back to Saturday Night Live. They're like, Siobhan, you have to go to Queens to the makeup artists from SNL who are genius at doing faces and body things. And I had to have basically my head and body remade.
Oh my God.
So let's just say they started with the head. And because of my faith, I maybe I don't know what, I don't have a lot of knock on wood fears, or I say, oh, everything's meant to be, hand it over, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And cut to, there had been a big earthquake, I believe in Ecuador, and there was a lot of people buried within that week. So these guys are, all right, Siobhan, we're going to, they're painting this rubber stuff on your face. We're going to do this, and, we're going to do stages. Okay, so then they would start to fill up your ears, and you have like a straw, then your eyes, and you're completely in the dark. And I'm like, oh my God. Inside my head, they're like talking the whole way. They're like, you have 2 minutes to go. And I'm like, I have 2 minutes to go. And I think I'm having a panic attack for the first time in my life. And I'm like, this isn't good. And then inside my head, I'm like, this would be a really good idea for a horror movie. Like, what if they really weren't making this is a fake email and I'm really not supposed to be here? And what if these people are trying to kill me? So I am breathing and I'm like with my finger like, okay, it's time to go. And they're like, okay, Siobhan, you're good. Ha. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm not kidding. Anyway, they peel it off. So that's where the head came from. So that was psychologically damaging.
Yeah.
Body, talk about ego. So they do my body, they rubber it. I'm like, I must have been nude, or I don't even, maybe a cover over me, it'll make me not be nude or something, like something around your neck, like when your haircut. Yeah. Then they make it and you look at the ground, you see your body, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to start exercising. My body is disgusting. But anyway, so Michael Haneke, going back full circle to your questions, I don't have any problem with someone, because this happens in the world.
Yeah.
So then how do you then move on from that,
Yeah. I love both of those movies. It's just, I think it's interesting. It's interesting.
I mean, you're dealing with a lunatic, it's like,
yeah,
so scary. And like, then put on top of it good looking, like Ted Bundy, like,
it was, so Ted Bundy.
Yeah. Good looking.
Yeah.
So Siobhan, as like 15-year-old theater kids, Anne and I were always cast as like the sexless sidekicks, the kooky grandparents. So we felt particularly seen when you said in an interview that when you finished acting school, people were like, you'll work in your 30s and 40s, and you were like, fuck that. And then you started to like write one-woman shows for yourself, which ultimately got you discovered by casting directors.
Absolutely. And then in my one-woman shows, I always played like a sexy girl. Because I was like, no one's going to cast me in this. Totally, or even like when I was in Wayward Pines with Matt Dillon again, because I've done 3 movies or 1 TV show and 2 movies with Matt Dillon. And I like play my character in Wayward Pines like, hi. Like, I think I'm really sexy, because you don't know that you're not sexy. You can't believe it when people, like when I went to graduate school for acting, I had been to a little tiny college in upstate, Lemoyne College, as I was telling you, and I got every part because there was not a big choice. So I had no clue that I wasn't like extreme, because my parents had instilled, and my mother's like, she used to come in my room after like parent teacher night and be like, Siobhan, oh my God, they love you. And I'd be like, they do? Or if I was in something and I was bad, or the director was mean to me, or like in high school, I'd be like, I was like, Mom, they told me I can't sing this. Oh, he's just jealous. You're the best singer up there. I'm like, I am?
I love your mother.
It's so great. I had a wart on my knee in high school. I was a cheerleader, and I was like gross. And I remember the history teacher made fun of me, and he's like, "There's no cheerleaders with warts on their knees." So I was able to somehow spin it and spin it and spin it. One time it came off, and I brought it into him in tinfoil. I go, "Hey, guess what? I was wart on my knee," and brought it in. Anyway, so when I went to graduate school, they said to me, we were in this director's lab, but actors had to be in it, and this big director, his name was Mr. Waring. He was a huge guy, and he's like, "Now, for example, Siobhan, you'd know the minute she walked in, she's not an ingenue, she's a character actress." And I was like, what the F? There's no Googling then, by the way. So I can't even, because I went to Lemoyne. I don't even know what an ingenue at this point. So I'm like, what's that? And they're like, the good looking one. I was like, okay. So then when I went to New York City, and like I said, I would go into auditions and people would say, oh my gosh, you're definitely going to work in your 40s. And when you tell a kid that in their mid-20s, you're like, That's a long time from now. And my parents are asking me when I'm going to, quote unquote, make it. So I need to do something else. So that's when, out of desperation, you start writing for yourself.
Well, you've mentioned this, but I feel like what is so cool is that it seems like in a way you're returning to your roots by writing and starring in two films recently. 2021's Rushed, which you mentioned, where you play like a gun-toting mother avenging her son's death from a hazing accident, which is very badass and very cool, and it's streaming right now, so our listeners should check it out. And also 2023's Shelter in Solitude, about an unlikely friendship between a has-been country singer and a man on death row, sort of inspired by your dad's stories as an attorney when you were a young person. So can you talk about, was there a catalyst for this return to writing your own material now?
Yes. Well, first of all, over the years, I would always do one-person shows when my career started to slump. I have 3 kids. I'm like, okay, I'm back. Or, different stages where you have a different look, where you're suddenly I'm not getting the young mothers anymore. And then even yourself, you got to self-analyze yourself. You're like, I am getting the young mothers, but I don't think I'm right for that. So that's what I would do. But now my youngest at this point, when I first started writing Rushed, is a junior in high school. And I am not, I could turn the camera and show you, it looks like Mary Poppins, on a bad, maybe they overdid the set. So when she wanted the doors to close. Anyway, so my daughter's going to be going off to college, and I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do with myself? Because as a character actress, you're working 3-4 months out of the year. You lie and say 6 months, but really you're not. Sometimes 2, and you're like, every artist, you get down in the dumps when you can't practice what you do. So I'm like, okay, so I should do another one-woman show. And I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do another one-woman show because, it's like afterwards you're like, wasn't that fun when we did that scene? Well, there's no we, it's just you. And I don't know, it's huge pressure. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to try my hand at writing a movie because I've been in a lot of movies. And at the time, my son was in college and all this fraternity hazing was going on. And in where I live in New Jersey, there was terrible. The Piazza boy had been killed at Penn State. It was all over the press. And you live as a mother in fear, my God, if this happens to my kid, what would I do? Mm-hmm. So that's where that movie came from. And then Shelter in Solitude, I was planning on taking a break, and the idea came to me in the middle of the night. So, honestly, I tell young actors, I'm like, I think it's the same with people with depression, really. It's like when you hit rock bottom, that's lucky. Because that's when your big ideas come, and that's when you also appreciate the highs, and you're like, can't go lower than that. So with my career, I would never have written if I really was being cast or if I had a job. So I was like, well, if no one's going to give me a job, I'll get myself a job. Which is an interesting thing, too, because right now I don't have any ideas for another movie. I'm like, I don't have an idea. Oh, I did write a play that hopefully will be done about my Irish Catholic family. And Patricia Heaton from Edward Ellis Raymond. It's like I have Monica Rosenthal from Edward Ellis Raymond, Lila Robbins. So hopefully I'm trying to raise the money now. But I literally have been considering, and I've never done it. And I have to even whisper it because I can't even take the thought of it a little bit. But I was thinking maybe I might try stand-up comedy at my ripe old age.
Yeah.
Because you to wait around for someone to cast you is just annoying.
Yeah. Has it felt like since the movies have come out that has opened any doors, or do you feel like you're still let me try something new?
Look, I was in Eileen Hathaway's movie, Eileen. I feel like I got that part definitely because I had just done Rushed, and, it's like the dating thing where you don't care. You're like, look, when you're dating, you're like, I just dumped some guy and I really don't want to go out with you right now. So I don't care if you like me. So I'm just going to be myself. So that's what it is with movie auditions. You're like, look, I'm trying to edit this movie. And if you don't want me, that's fine. I'm just going to, I'm going to do my Boston accent and not be ashamed. So I do feel it helps with confidence. That being said, I think that, it gets harder and harder at this stage of the game. Okay, I auditioned for a commercial recently. I don't really audition for commercials. I don't really ever do them, and my mother, she died 2 months short of 97, and she'd be like, Siobhan, why would you audition? They know what you can do.
Love
And
her
it's
so much.
literally like so true because it's
Yeah.
such a sign of weakness. I remember years ago in my 20s when, remember Get Smart? Are you guys too young? The TV show?
We
Yeah.
know,
So
yeah.
the lead actress, I'm forgetting her name right now, was auditioning for a voiceover. And I was
Peggy
like,
Lipton?
yes. I'm like, for the love of God, Peggy, what are you doing here? They should be giving this to you. This is disrespectful. So, long and the short of it is, I go in for this audition for some travel thing that Tina Fey's going to be doing in Mexico. No, I didn't go in, it was Zoom. For 4 days, I'm like, okay, look, I'm going to lower my standards. I'm going to audition for this because I want to go to Mexico. And I wouldn't mind a little commercial money. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Sign of weakness, red flag. I don't hear a thing. And it's a big joke with my friends and my family. I'm like, I didn't get the part. Cut to the Super Bowl. There goes Glenn Close riding by. I'm like, okay, you know what? That's okay.
You can't do anything about that. Yeah.
The point is they know who they want. Like, what are you torturing me for? And if it is weirdly like dating where you're like, please like me. I mean, you either want me or you don't. Do I have to like do the audition for a commercial, especially?
Yeah.
Okay, Siobhan, you were a featured player on Saturday Night Live from 1991 to 1992 during the Chris Farley, Adam Sandler era. Was Saturday Night Live always a dream? Do you remember what you did for your audition, and what was your relationship like with Lauren Bacall?
Okay, absolutely was a dream. My family valued funny growing up. I loved to do characters. I was like, this is my dream. I'd written a one-woman show, was my first one. I did it in New York, it did well. I brought it to LA with $5,000. I was teaching English as a second language. My Japanese students and Spanish students were my audience. And then eventually people started to come. Seinfeld came, SNL came. And Nora Dunn and, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. Jan Hooks were leaving the show. And they were going to replace them. So Pam Thomas, who's a great person, came to my show and were like, we want to fly you to New York and audition. So I was like, God, what am I going to do? So you go and you want to talk about competition. So the audience is the cast. So it's Chris, Adam. But at that time, there was the junior cast. Like just when you thought there couldn't be more stressful, they have the junior cast and the senior cast. So it was Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, and then the younger cast, Adam, Chris, Rock, greatest guys ever. David Spade, Chris Farley. Yeah. So they're in the audience. And, as an actor and auditioning, you're almost more, I mean, I personally was more nervous about them because you're like, oh my God, these people are hilarious. I want them to think I'm funny. And you're in the dressing room with 10 other women. And you want to talk. I learned a long time ago. I always tell students this if I talk to kids, don't talk because this is the way an audition room will be like. Yeah, so when I did my episode on 30 Rock, and I was laughing my head off with Alec Baldwin. It's like the psychological game, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll just stay in the corner and pretend I'm, whoever I'm doing. And so anyway, I did my characters. You got 3 minutes, and it was just like basically like a montage in 3 minutes. It goes really well, and afterwards, the Paramount Hotel was brand new in New York City. So of course, SNL always pick the hippest places to go to. And afterwards, we all go out, but it's like, you're going out with people that you don't know. It's like worse than your first day of freshman year in college because you're like, okay, this is hideous. I don't know anybody. And everyone's really funny. And everyone's trying to be the funniest person in the room because everyone's funny. And so you're like, oh my God, inside your head. And there's no cell phones. So you can't like run to the bathroom and like call your best friend or text and be like, what the F? So, it's freaking tense. And I remember Chris Rock and Rob Schneider were like, Siobhan, it's going to be. And Chris Farley and I hit it off day one. We were so similar in our family backgrounds and just everything. So everything at SNL is nocturnal. So, people stay up all night. And I think I got the call at like 5 or 6 in the morning because I called my parents to tell them. And my mother was like, oh my God, your father's golfing. So I called my dad. He was golfing. And they're like, oh, hi, Siobhan. Your father's on the 17th hole. We'll get him. So I'm like, I'll wait. And he comes in from this little, small golf course. And he's like, what's up? You okay? Like, he probably thought I was dead. And I was like, Dad, I'm going to be on Saturday Night Live. He's like, guys, Siobhan's going to be on Saturday Night Live. That's dynamite. I'm proud of you, honey. All right, I got to get back to golf. Click. And then now the insanity begins. And I remember, first of all, it was so fast. And I was like, I don't have hip clothes. I'm not hip. What's happening? And I'm not a writer. And you were expected to write and act. And I was like, okay. It's like applying for a job and you're like a nurse and you're like, I didn't know I was supposed to be a doctor too. So anyway, it was great. It was highly competitive, really nocturnal, and fun as anything. Great. Made great friends, and highly competitive.
Yeah. So speaking of the women in your cast, it included Victoria Jackson, Ellen Cleghorn, Julia Sweeney, and then you were later joined by Beth Cahill and Melanie Hutzel, a former guest of this show.
Yeah.
Who was your buddy there of the women?
So Ellen Cleghorn was my office mate. We're still friends. Got along great. She's awesome.
Love it.
Melanie Hutzel was great. I remember thinking, I think she was 22, and I was like, she's so young, and I'm so old, because I think I was 28. And that's the way it always was. It's like, can somebody find out how old Siobhan was? And I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm ancient. Julia Sweeney's awesome. So the women were really, really supportive. And then, sadly and unbelievably, Erin Maroney, who dated Chris Farley, she was Lauren's assistant. She was only 23 at the time. She became producer on both my films, Rushed and Shelter and Solitude. And she died of an aneurysm a year ago, March 3rd. And yeah, so,
I'm so
we
sorry.
stayed friends for all those years, and she was hilarious. And yeah. And Chris and I would go to church together every Sunday, and he was so funny. And I met my husband that year, and he'd be like, Peter, I've been a bad boy. I got hurt. And Peter's like, listen, you fat bastard. And we would Peter played rugby, and so did Chris. So they were very much alike. And, we hung out all the time. Like I said, we would go to church, and, you'd be out till like 4 or 5 in the morning. And then Chris would be like, I'm so sorry. And I'd be like, Chris, you can't talk out loud in church. He's like, sorry, was I talking out loud? He was just the greatest guy ever. When he died, you'd think that it would be all celebrities and everything in his memorial at St. Malachy's in New York, the Actors Church. And a shut-in that he used to visit gave the talk, because he didn't tell anybody that, but he used to visit shut-ins. He was a great guy. Really great guy.
Yeah. That's
such a lot.
And we used to call each other Not Naturally, because there's so many people that are really funny on stage, but if you're in a social setting, they're not funny. They're just it's very strange. But he'd say, what do you think, Siobhan? What do you think it sounds like? We're like, Not Naturally. So we used to call each other Not Naturally.
That's so sweet.
Siobhan, rank these hosts for us in terms of kindest to meanest, if you remember. Roseanne and Tom Arnold.
She was great. She was so funny. And they'd be like making out in the halls. I was like, what is going on? And no, she was really supportive and funny.
Yeah.
Jason Priestley.
He was great. He was just a kid. When Jason Priestley was on, my nieces and nephews were like, I want to say on my husband's side, like 9, 10, and 12. And they're like, can you please get Jason Priestley's autograph? And I was like, I am not asking Jason Priestley for his autograph. So I got his picture and forged it. And for years they knew it, because they could tell from my Christmas cards that it was the same handwriting.
Oh my God.
I love that. Oh, last one, Sharon Stone.
Oh my gosh. So that was a crazy time, because I think PETA they were going to throw blood. And so it went around. You got to have 2 tickets for people to go on the floor. But you could have as many people as you wanted to your dressing room, which my husband took complete advantage of. And his entire rugby team was like, that's right, Ellen. Ellen was the best. There'd be like, my sink would have ice in it with beers in it, with rugby players' beers. And be like, may I get to the bathroom? And Ellen was amazing. Like, most people would be like, Siobhan, can I talk to you? I mean, I know you like this guy, but this is ridiculous. But that's when, so Sharon Stone, when she was on, they were like, absolutely no guests, because there was a challenge about that. And she was more serious. She wasn't like a funny, like it wasn't like joking around. You know what I mean? Like Roseanne was clearly comfortable with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Siobhan, you play Elaine's ex-roommate, Tina, and then who later becomes Kramer's girlfriend on 3 iconic episodes of Seinfeld. You have this great bit where you're like drinking out of the water bottle, like through a straw, like a gerbil feeder. It's so funny and stupid. Was this an actor's choice or was it written like that for you in the scripts?
No, that was my choice because what happened was my part was much bigger. And Larry David called me home and he said, Siobhan, I got to talk to you. And I was like, holy crap, I'm going to get fired. I thought it went well. And he was like, look, there's the way it goes. You got to fit the whole script into 22 minutes. So every week we have to cut a lot. So we're going to have to cut your part way down. And I was like, Larry, this is so nice of you to call me because I don't care. I'm just glad I had to be on it. But I learned there's other ways to make your part big. And that might be something like, I don't know, a water bottle that you sip for like an inordinate amount of time. And same with holes. Like Henry Winkler called me and I'm like, oh my God, I'm working with Henry Winkler, the Fonz. I love him. And he calls me. He's like, Siobhan, our part is not very big. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But I'm like, I'm in a movie with the Fonz and I'm in holes and I don't care. And he's like, so what do you think we should do to make it bigger? And as a joke, I said, maybe we should do a dance. And he's like, that's a good idea. So in Seinfeld, I'm going to be like this self-important actress that, because I wanted to like stretch the part out. I had to do something physical. And like I said, I was always like giving myself a limp or an accent or something like a twitch or something and be like, so I was like, I'm just going to be like, it's so important. Like, it's real hilarious to me right now because my daughter, Sinead, she takes acting class and she'll call me and she'll be like, Mom, I have to go up with an independent activity. And the girl that I'm working with can cry. I don't know how to cry. And I'm like, listen, it's all hilarious to me because I like lived this. And at the time you think it's really important. So in that episode, I played an actress that was like, I did this improv class. Can you believe it? And you think that you're so important and you're so ridiculous at that stage of your life. You're like, I did this. I can't believe I come out of this. I did this improv where to shoot the water in the clown's mouth. Like it's so self-involved and gross that you want to vomit. But that's where drinking of the water came from. It was twofold. It was what could the actor do? What would the role do? And what could I do to get more screen time?
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, Siobhan Fallon, we're going to get you out of here. This is our rapid fire section. This is just us throwing everything else at you. It's rapid fire for us because we're just throwing a lot, but you can take your time if you need to.
Absolutely.
First tier. It seems like you've often been cast to play to your talents as a red-headed Irish Catholic woman. So why the fuck didn't they tap you to play one of Mark Wahlberg's 7 sisters in David O. Russell's The Fighter?
Are you kidding me? I have written to David O. Russell. I'm like, hello, I would love to be in your movies. I love your movies so much. Please cast me. What is going on? I don't know. IDK.
That's crazy.
I know. Listen, I am a semi-unattractive girl that could play an Irish girl from Boston who's a dirtbag. What's going on? I don't get it.
Bullshit. Meanwhile, they cast Conan O'Brien's sister. Who is she?
Yeah, it's like, have you seen me from the side? I have 10 chins. I can do this. And I can do an accent. I have a stack of accents in my bag.
You really do. Okay, Siobhan, you've worked with screen legends, some of which we've mentioned, like Tommy Lee Jones, Lauren Bacall, Morgan Freeman, Demi Moore, Betty White, Glenn Close, Henry Winkler, Will Smith, Tina Fey, Steve Martin, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Tilda Swinton, Ben Gazzara, Samuel L. Jackson, Lily Tomlin, Michael Caine, and Bernie Mac. Who surprised you and who left something to be desired?
Okay, wait. Because you finished with Bernie Mac, I have the best story about him.
Okay.
I did the movie What's the Worst That Could Happen, and let the title speak for itself. And Bernie Mac's in it. Bernie has now completely hit it big because what's the name of that movie that came out?
The Kings of Comedy?
Kings of Comedy. And Bernie Mac, first of all, taught me so much. He's like, Siobhan, what I did was I studied the business. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to wait years to become the biggest East Coast or West Coast. I'm going to hit the Midwest. But the best was, we're in this hotel in Boston, and he walks in one day, and he has buck teeth on. I go, what in God's name are you doing? He goes, I can't stand it. I'm being recognized everywhere I go. So he brought buck teeth.
That is cool.
So great.
I love him.
See, I always cared more about the experiences with the people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so fun.
Yeah.
So, Siobhan, as you mentioned, you play Shia LaBeouf's mom in the Disney Western Holes, where you get to act in this very cool set that's like your inventor husband, played by Henry Winkler. It's like an apartment turned gadgetorium with all of his inventions around you. Was acting on that set as cool as it looked, or was it a total nightmare because there were so many different moving pieces?
No, it was so fun. And I absolutely love kids. And Shia was awesome. The kids were awesome. Their parents were with them. And I love Andy Davis. Andy Davis, who directed it, and I have remained friends for years. He's a class act. His wife, Adrian, they're the best people. I mean, truly good people. I loved being in that movie. It was so fun. I absolutely loved it. And Henry was so great. Like Henry, oh, this is crazy. So Henry is dyslexic. And my little college I told you about, Lemoyne, that I went to, there was these two brothers, the Sicilian brothers, who were in my class. Their dad was a teacher, high school teacher in New York City. When he turned 75, he's long dead now, they called me and they said, he was Henry's teacher. Would Henry ever write him a note? Henry's like, Siobhan, I'll do him one better. And he called him on his birthday. That's the kind of guy he is. Awesome, great guy.
I love it.
Siobhan, you play Glenn Close's secretary in The Paper. You play Betty White's secretary on Golden Girls, and you play Jeff Garland's secretary in The Bounty Hunter. What is your favorite, like, secretary piece of actorly business? You know, like twirling a phone cord, dialing a rotary phone with a pencil, you know.
Well, as you're talking about, I was Renee Zellweger's in Newtown. Okay, let me think about that. Well, you know, I was my father's receptionist during high school in the summers. And the best thing to do is fake like you're actually working, but you're doing, you know, you got candy in the drawer. I love gum twirling more than anything. I also love like just eating whatever's in the drawer or trying to get out of work and, you know, coming up with something. So, you know, it's basically anything but doing the job or just faking that you're writing things down, doodling that you're like faking that you're actually working and you're not.
Yeah.
Oh, and when I was a receptionist in the law firm in New York City, I used to jiggle the wires so that the whole phone system would go out so I could go home about every 3 or 4 months. You couldn't do it too close together because they'd be on to you.
This is a hot tip I wish I knew years ago.
I still get together with my boss, Steve Siller, his greatest guy. And it was like, Steve, you know I used to jiggle the wires so that Con Edison or whoever had to come in, whoever was in charge of the phones.
He had no idea.
He had no idea, but I needed a break. I was like, I'm going to do a breakdown or, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Siobhan Fallon Hogan, last question.
Yes.
You were in a movie that belongs to a genre of film that I like to call men's coming of death. This is a movie where like elderly men are forced to deal with their retirement, aging, failing health in some sort of comedic ensemble. It's become popular in the last 15 years. Okay, so this film, Going in Style, is directed by Zach Braff, and you play a diner waitress serving pie to Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, and Alan Arkin. Siobhan Fallon, if the roles were reversed and it was you and a group of women starring in this kind of film, who would you dream cast in your Going in Style?
Okay, you mean older people now. Okay, I just want to tell you one.
No, you would be the star of the film, and what women would you cast in it?
And let me just shove in there that at the end of that movie, they said to me, Zach said, Siobhan, who do you want to dance with, Morgan Freeman or Michael Caine? And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, that's like, do you want to be with Jesus or God? Like, I was like, what?
I'm so glad they gave you a choice.
I picked Morgan, and it was a riot. And I remember I'm saying to him, Morgan, I look like 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound bag. He's like, you look just fine. Let's go. Anyway, so who would I cast in my dream cast? Okay. Oh my God. Diane Keaton, Shirley MacLaine, and Lily Tomlin.
That's so good.
Right?
And you, yeah.
And maybe I could still be, as a matter of fact, I was at my fattest during that. I could still be the waitress.
Siobhan, you're the star. You are the star of this film.
The star. Okay. Oh, I like that. So, yeah, that would be great.
So who are you casting if you're the star? Who are you knocking out?
Like
you got two boys.
Oh my God, if somebody has to get off the island? Oh my God. You know what? I'm going to have to leave out the caster. I can't bump one of those three. We're going to have to make it 4. We're going to have to make it.
It's a quartet.
4 robbers.
Done.
Can you imagine how lucky that was to be with Michael? I remember I said to Michael Caine, I go, Michael, I have to tell you something. I said, I always recommend to any acting student that they must watch your tape that you did for the BBC on acting on film. He said, Siobhan, let me tell you something. I did that for the BBC and I was paid. I have no idea how to teach acting on film. I just know how to do it, but I had to say something. So I said, Michael, I learned more from you than in 2 years of graduate school. And Alan Arkin, I mean, can you imagine how lucky that was?
I know, it's so cool. I love him so much.
So great. I got my son to be an extra on that. He was only in high school because I was like, you got to be with these people. This is like unbelievable.
Incredible.
Yeah. And Anne Margaret.
Ugh.
Like, what? Then that was the day I found out why I really wasn't an ingenue. I was like, you know what? It's okay.
Anne Margaret's like 90 and still an
She's
ingenue
stunning.
somehow.
Siobhan Fallon Hogan, this has been a total hoot. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And please tell people to tune into my movies. I really appreciate it.
I can't get over the number of dialects that Siobhan Fallon Hogan brought to this interview. I was so impressed with her Lars von Trier impression, her Lauren Bacall impression, her Chris Farley impression. I just feel like she has so many tricks up her sleeve. And also, as you said, like, was so game to talk to us about everything. And the fact that we got like 15 minutes on Dogville, one of the first movies that you and I ever shared our love for together, like 14, 15 years ago, was such a thrill. I mean, I can't get over the idea of what his sets look like, what a Lars von Trier set looks like, where they're fucking drawing chalk flowers on the ground. Siobhan Fallon Hogan, just like that she was in the mix with all of those people and had such a great experience. I mean, I think it speaks to her talent as an actor. She is fucking so good as a dramatic actor. And I think it's rare that you get to see somebody that was brought up to the business in the Saturday Night Live universe that gets an opportunity to do the kind of work that she gets to do. And I'm so here for it. I was trying to think about like other women of the Saturday Night Live world that have gotten to do serious work. And I feel like it's very few. I feel like right now Kristen Wiig is getting the opportunity and Molly Shannon is getting the opportunity. And like Jane Curtin to a certain extent shows up here and there in serious things, but not that often. And I can't think of other people off the top of my head.
I also think when you think of like Maya Rudolph and Anna Gasteyer, like they maybe have dibbled and dabbled as well, but I do think it's a different thing for like the women of like the aughts onward. And that's sort of like our, when we were in like high school like era of watching SNL. But I think when you think of the people that we like grew up with like as little kids with older siblings, when you think about the 90s SNL, when the women were so much less celebrated than they were in the later years, because I feel like you're bookended by like Gilda Radner being a huge star, and then by the like the Tina Fey era. But yeah, I think the Jan Hooks middle is where it's like those women didn't get nearly the shine they deserved, and also didn't get nearly the post SNL career that they deserved. And I think like two things that were so fun about Siobhan was, one, talking to her about her dialect work and her sort of jumping into that story about her getting to do As You Like It and in Shakespeare in the Park at the Delacorte Theater, and how like that transported me into this whole world of like, she was like, I got cast in this, and like and like Viola Davis was in the ensemble, and she had just graduated from Juilliard, and I was like doing bits with her, like writing high on my teeth, and I was like, this is so fucking funny. And it's also like, that's like what I would have been like as like, it's like what theater school was for me in some respects, even though I was also hyper serious. Also, like, I was a goofball, and also like some of it is like stupid, and you're like, it's like, are you a person who like talks to people and says funny things when you're doing stage business, or are you a person who like is acting in character and is also saying nothing but like doing the character, and you're like, we have to watch the and you're like, what? And like, instead of me, who would always just be like, cherry celebration, celebrate good times, cool in the gang, like I would like say also garbage, but it was like stupid. Anyway, point is, I loved her for that. And also I think when we were, we didn't talk about this specifically with Siobhan, but I think like talking about Lars von Trier films, I think they just seem like such, speaking of theater school, like they seem like such, for me, as a person who like loves the theater, they just seem like such a cool and interesting place to actually get to do things. And like, I don't negate that they could be traumatic. And I know that lots of actors are like, hey, I'm here as an actor, and like, I know how to do my thing, and I don't need you to like make me sleep on like a wooden slab and eat like porridge and like bathe with like well water to be of this world. But I think there's a version where I'm like, but that sounds fun to like have your responsibilities put on hold for 6 weeks to film a movie and really immerse yourself in the world and like be like, oh, I'm sleeping like shit. So that informs my character being like a nasty fucking curmudgeon. Seems cool. And finally, I thought it was so interesting how when we talked about Bjork's experience, because she's incredible in Dancer in the Dark, and guess what? It holds up, and I rewatched it. And when we talked about like Bjork talking about how traumatic that experience was for her working with Lars and in that film, and Siobhan was like, you know, I think like she was not an actor, and Lars actually like asked me to like help her and like you know, like to talk to her in character to get her ready for scenes and things. And I thought that was so cool because it really does inform her character, the prison guard in Dancer in the Dark, because she's such a compassionate prison guard, like it's such an antithetical characterization. And I feel like that had to be because of the mind meld that they had to do as actors, so that, you know, like Siobhan was like putting herself in the shoes of Bjork's character and like they were feeling sort of the same things. And I think that is a testament to Siobhan's talent, and also I think Bjork's performance in some part is because of Siobhan's talent.
Completely. I completely agree. And I just feel like her artistry and how she continues to evolve. My favorite thing was that she was like, yeah, basically like you start to change, you look different, you go away for a little bit, you raise your kids, and then you're like, hey, I'm back. So how do I announce that I'm back? She wrote her own material. She wrote and directed movies. Like she's saying, here, I'm in this new phase of my career, and here's what that looks like. And I'm reminding you again of my talent, which is so hard. This business is so hard, particularly on women. But I just feel like you have to keep yourself fresh in people's minds. And I feel like she's so smart and so savvy and so like she's going to tackle stand-up comedy. Like she's not afraid of anything. And I really love that about her. I also love that she was like, you know, you work for 2 months a year, but you say it's 6. You know, it's like everybody lies because you're like, that's what the business is. You have to just keep telling people that you're busy even when you're not. I'm like, ooh, what a hustle. She is a hustler, and I love it.
Yeah, and also like talking to movie star film legend Lauren Bacall, who was like, are we ever going to work again? And it's like, Jesus Christ, it never stops.
Right. Folks, if you like what you hear, if you're enjoying the show, if you're new to the show, if you're old to the show, leave us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast app. It's the best thing you can do to keep us in people's eyes and ears, get us to the top of the algorithm. A few words, an emoji, an actress suggestion, anything will do. Thank you kindly.
And while you're at it, you can follow us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/YouMightKnowHer. You can also follow us on social media at Damian Bellino. That's Damian with an A. And you can follow my best friend here at Rodeman. That's RODEMANNE. And you can follow You Might Know Her From on TikTok and Instagram to keep in touch with all of the You Might Know Her From business.
This show, You Might Know Her From, is produced by us, independently, Ann Rodeman and Damian Bellino. We want to thank our consultants, as always, at Grumpy Entertainment, Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears, and all the editing on each and every episode you hear is courtesy of Daniel Sears. Special thanks to Gang. All the music you hear on You Might Know Her From is thanks to Gang. Gang is 3/4 women. Gang is from Philadelphia, and you can download and stream their music wherever you listen.
Also, folks, did you know that Anne, my cohort, my co-host, my co-producer, and my co-soulmate with Ronnie the dog, do you know that Anne categorizes, documents, and makes notations for all of the things discussed on each and every episode of You Might Know Her From? These are called the show notes, and you can find them below the episode description underneath the Patreon link for each and every episode. It is a treasure trove. It is like going into the microfiche in the biblioteca. You are going to be so into it. For real, you're gonna go and it's like, remember what was the thing called where like it's like this was like we had a whole set
the microfiche. Yeah,
no, but you also like what is it called? The numbers that you were like, oh,
the card catalog.
Yeah, what is that thing called though? Like,
the Dewey Decimal System.
Yes.
Oh, we love Dewey Decimal. We love it. We love it here. Bring back the Dewey Decimal. Bring back the card catalog. I know the Dewey Decimal System still exists. Look, I love the New York Public Library. I love the Columbia Public Library. I love libraries. I love the microfiche. When you said it to me, I had like a sense memory of twirling the knob and like watching the newspaper clips go by and like finding death announcements from the 1920s in my hometown. Ooh, I love it.